Alright, so for this video, we're going to start talking about Phase 2 in Tiny Epic Dinosaurs. So for Phase 2, you're going to assign ranchers, which means you're going to take actions during Phase 2. So let's talk about all the various actions you can take on your turn, okay? Here's one of the sections of the actions you can take. You can get a free-range dino, okay? When you do a free-range dino action, regardless of which of the 4 dinosaurs that you go for, before you get any of those 4 dinosaurs, you're going to roll the wrangler dice, okay? You're going to roll this dice, and then something might happen, depending on your roll. If you roll this net, nothing happens, so you get the dinosaur, and the rancher will stay at the location of one of these 4 locations that you were going for. So, for instance, if I was to put my rancher on the, the Stegosaurus, for instance, I would still get my Stegosaurus, and the Stegosaurus would go into my holding area, okay? That's what would happen, okay? And nothing else would happen because I got the net, almost as if it was a successful capture, because after all, you are trying to catch free-range dinosaurs, which means this net indicates that you successfully caught it with no problems at all. If you roll this, however, this egg here, you actually ended up getting 2 dinosaurs. So, for instance, if I was going for the Stegosaurus, instead of getting 1 Stegosaurus, I would get 2 Stegosauruses. Awesome, right? And that's cool. Getting 2 for the price of 1 is definitely awesome if you can pull that off, for sure. That's definitely a big benefit, and that's definitely a reason why you'd want to try. You have to roll the dice regardless when you take this particular action. But it's definitely a reason to roll it because, hey, you can get 2 for the price of 1, which is always almost always a good thing. So that's definitely something you'll want to do, for sure, is to try to get this. Now, if you get, and they will still, of course, will go into your holding area if you get 2. But if you get this indicates that there was an attack involved, meaning you got injured, and the dinosaur injured you in the process. Well, that doesn't mean you don't get the dinosaur. You still get the dinosaur. But what's going to happen is the dinosaur that you were going for and the rancher involved, they're going to end up going on medical leave. And so if you're the green player, you're going to put your green rancher here, as well as the dinosaur that you were trying to catch. It also got injured and needs to be on medical leave for a little bit. Don't worry, you will get these guys back later. But there is a reason why you don't want this to happen. The main reason is if you were planning on trying to complete a contract. Now remember, you want to try to complete contracts in this game, and in order to do so, your dinosaurs have to be in your ranch. Well, if it goes to medical leave, you're not going to be able to put it into your ranch until the phase Arrange Ranch happens. Now, why is that important to know? Well, when you take this phase here, Arrange Ranch, once you do that, you get to place all of the dinosaurs in your holding area, as well as enclosure fences that you didn't build yet. They are all going to go into your ranch at the same time. And this is something that simultaneously happens. So all the players playing the game, they will take that phase all at once. And we'll explain that again when we get to that ranch phase, that Arrange Ranch phase. We'll explain it again. But when that happens, once that happens, that means you will not be able to take the action public contracts until the next round. That's something to note. So if you already had a lot of dinosaurs in your ranch and you just needed, for instance, 1 more Stegosaurus to complete both the private and the public contract all in one fell swoop, and this is all you needed was 1 more Stegosaurus, and you were going to take an action during the Assign Rangers phase, because there's an action here that you can take, and we'll get to that. If you were going to take an action that lets you put a dinosaur ahead of time into your ranch, well, now you won't be able to do it because your dinosaur is now effectively in medical leave. And so that is why you don't want that to happen, especially because if you were trying to complete a public contract, or even both for that matter, you're not going to be able to do it now unless you can get a stegosaurus somewhere else. And of course still have a rancher available to take the action. So that can be problematic if it does happen. Maybe in the beginning of the game it's no big deal because maybe you don't have any dinosaurs in your ranch to start off with anyways. But towards the middle of the game, especially at the end of the game, that could cost you some victory points, or a lot of victory points in a sense. And that's what's going to happen if you roll this dice. So obviously, bad thing to happen, and it's on two sides. So it's possible it could happen quite a bit, okay? So that's the Wrangler dice and how it works. All right, now that we've explained how that action works, let's continue on with the actions. Okay, so like I said, you'll always use the Wrangler dice with these dinosaurs, and there's a nice little handy guide here that reminds you what that does. Then we have the Dino Market. Now, the Dino Market is another way of getting dinosaurs. Now, maybe perhaps you wanted a particular dinosaur and your friend blocked you by taking that particular dinosaur you wanted, and you don't want to waste a bunch of meeples. Well, you could take this action instead, which gives you the choice of one of the four. But it's going to cost you a supply resource. So if you have no supply resources, you cannot complete this action. So that's something to note. You're going to need at least one supply in order to complete this action. But if you do, the cool thing is, this is a separate action here from this, which means you do not roll this dice, which means you don't get a possibility of two dinosaurs, obviously, but you also don't get that possibility of injuring yourself as well as the dinosaur. So, obviously, this is a good route to go if you want to try to complete a public and private contract, because this guarantees that you'll get to get that dinosaur without any possibilities of complications of medical leave with that particular action. So that is an option you can do. So that's two of the actions that you can take in the game. There's a lot more though, so let's continue on. There's a lot more. Now these actions here, they're all on two separate cards. So we have contracts, we have barriers, and we have research. So let's talk about contracts. So in order to complete the public contract, you're going to have to place a rancher here to complete it, okay? You'll place the rancher here. Then if you have the dinosaurs indicated, you'd have to, of course, have the dinosaurs in your ranch to discard in order to complete the public contract. And then, only then, if you completed the public contract, would you be allowed to try to complete one of your private contracts, okay? And that's what you do with that particular action. Now, over here, you can do the same exact thing, public and private actions, but it's going to cost you a supply resource to do. Now, the only reason why you'd want to do that is if somebody already chose this action here, and now, in a sense, is trying to block you, and so you can just pay a supply resource to take this one instead of wasting a bunch of meeples going to that location, a bunch of actions going to that location in order to complete the contract. So that is an option. Of course, if you're playing a 4-player game, it's possible that they could both be covered up, and then what are you going to do, right? So you have to plan ahead, of course. But that's how the contracts action are going to function. Then there's the barriers action. Now, this one you can take at the cost of one supply, and what you can do on this particular action, you have two options, but the first option is the better option. The first option is if you take this action, you can actually move a dinosaur you have in your holding area to your ranch. This is very useful if you want to try to complete a public and private contract and you only need one more dinosaur to do it, and you want to do it this round. This could be a way of doing that in the same exact round that you get the dinosaur that you need. So you can get a dinosaur you have in your holding area, and you can put it into your ranch. And you don't have to worry about it escaping, because after all, this is phase 2 that we are in, and nothing bad happens until phase 4 as far as dinosaurs escaping. So that's one of the actions you can take. You can do that. This, you can take a fence, any fence, and move it. out of your ranch, which I don't understand why that would be useful. I still don't understand that, so we're not going to get involved in that. I never used this function as the action. And both of these, you can't. I don't know about that one for sure, so we're not going to talk too much more about that particular part of the action. But this one here is obviously the better of the two, for sure. Then there's other things you can do for barriers as actions are concerned. You can put a meeple here, a rancher here, to get one fence segment, which will go to your holding area. You can do this one, which will give you the first player token. Whoever's the first player token will go first in every round. But if you want to go first once in a while for a round later on in the game, you can take this from your opponent by placing a meeple here, and then you can start going first if you want to. And there might be a benefit or two by going first. Who knows? But that's one of the actions you can take. The other action you can take for barriers is at the cost of one supply, you can actually take 2 fence segments. And that's the only 2 ways you're going to get the fences. You're going to get them with this action and with this action. So that's, obviously some possibilities of some actions for barriers of what you can do. But there's still more, folks. So let's continue. So here we have the research action, and there's 2 segments for the research action. The last one, though, is a bit of a doozy. But if you decide you want to do a research action, it's going to cost you both a plant resource and a meat resource to complete this action. But then once you do that, you'll get one of these 2 options. You'll either get to take one of these 3 face-up cards for yourself. You'll get to, you're obviously looking at them and you've already decided which one you want to take. Ooh, I like this Draco Rex. And that's what you would get, okay? Or you can look at the top 3 cards of the research pile and choose one to keep. Then, what is another thing that happens, the other 2 you decide not to take, which you can't take anyways, are actually going to go over here to the right of the ones that already face up. That means that if you don't like, if you do that action and you like one of them, the other 2 you don't like anyway, but maybe your opponents will, because then if they take the research action, they get those extra options. They get to look at those other cards that are face up and maybe take one of them instead of one of these. So that's something that will happen. Now, during the phase, we'll talk about what happens with these research cards when we get to it. But there's something that's going to happen to these research cards at the end of each round. But we'll get to that later. So that's one of the actions that you can take. And then there's this action. You can discard any dinosaur from your ranch, meaning it has to come from your ranch, but you can discard a dinosaur from your ranch in order to take the same exact action. So maybe somebody took this action already, and you don't want to pay the extra meeples to do it, but hey, you've got an extra dinosaur that you don't think you're going to utilize anytime soon, so hey, I want more research and development stuff, so yeah, I'll discard a dinosaur to get more research and development type cards. Okay, so that's the actions you can take for those particular locations, and then there's still one type of action left to talk about that you can take on your turn, and that's resources. So you can take the action that allows you to gain these resources. So you can put a rancher here to gain 2 supply resources. You can put a rancher here to gain 2 meat resources. You can put a rancher there to gain 2 plant resources. And then, for instance, if a player has already taken one of these spots, then hey, you can put your rancher over here to at least still get one of each of these, which is a nice thing that they did. That you don't have to try to put more meeples here to get the resources you need in order to feed your dinosaurs. That's nice that they have that there as an option. It's not as nice as this, obviously, but, at least you don't have to try to fight for something, and you can get one more. Maybe that one more will be enough. Who knows? But that's all of the actions you can take during the Assign Ranchers phase. Alright, so that's it for that phase, and we'll talk about the next phase, Phase 3, in the next video.